The evening was typical, a warm, elegant dinner party with soft music playing and glasses of wine passed around. Guests were laughing, chatting about everything from work to vacations. Yet, as the protagonist scanned the room, unease gnawed at him. He sat at the head of the table, surrounded by friends and acquaintances. But something felt off. His wife, Julia, was too animated, too eager to share stories of her latest adventures. And then there was that unsettling feeling, like being an outsider in his own home. He tried to ignore it, but the sensation lingered in his chest. It was as if the script of his life had changed without him knowing. In the middle of a casual conversation, Julia casually mentioned her weekend getaway with Max, a man none of the guests had heard of. Her voice was light, almost cheerful, as she recounted the lavish trip he had arranged for her. Private dinners, extravagant shopping sprees, and late-night walks along the water. The guests nodded, captivated by the luxury, but for the protagonist, each word cut like a blade. His heart raced, the name Max echoing in his mind, and every detail of the getaway felt like a direct assault on his reality. Julia spoke with excitement, unaware of the growing turmoil inside him. The sense of betrayal settled in, heavy and suffocating, but he did nothing. He smiled, pretending everything was normal. Internally, a slow burn of humiliation and disbelief began to consume him. His wife was recounting her affair with a gleam in her eye, as if it were nothing more than a harmless indulgence. How long had this been going on? How could he have been so blind? The anger simmered beneath the surface, but he refused to let it show. The guests continued to praise her, and he simply smiled, his grip on composure slipping. A growing sense of isolation washed over him, and the man he thought he knew was slipping away. The foundation of everything they had built together seemed to crack beneath his feet. A storm of emotions raged within him: hurt, anger, betrayal. Part of him wanted to confront Julia right then and there, but he knew that would only give her control of the narrative. No, he had to bide his time. As much as his heart screamed to tear everything down in that moment, he needed to play it smart. The pain of her actions cut deep, but he couldn't let his emotions dictate his next move. Julia had been deceiving him for months. Every little detail, each smile, each kiss, now felt hollow. He knew what he had to do next. He would gather evidence and expose the truth on his terms. The first step was obvious. Julia's phone. He quietly checked her texts, browsing through the messages and phone records, hoping to find some sign that the affair wasn't as serious as it seemed. But there it was, clear as day. A trail of messages between Julia and Max, spanning weeks. His stomach churned with each new discovery. But it wasn't just the texts. He checked their shared bank account. Large, unexplained withdrawals, expensive gifts, dinners, weekends away, all paid for by Max. The evidence piled up. There was no turning back now. He had the proof he needed. The calm he had maintained was slipping, replaced by grim determination. He knew what he had to do next. The next dinner party would be the moment of reckoning. He would confront her publicly, making sure the fallout was on his terms. The idea made his stomach turn, but it also gave him a sense of power he hadn't felt in months. This would be his moment. He rehearsed what he would say, carefully considering each word. Julia would have nowhere to hide. The suspense was unbearable, but he remained calm. The pieces were in place, and the time for action had arrived. The night of the next dinner party arrived. The house was perfectly prepared, and the guests began trickling in. Julia, as usual, was the center of attention, charming everyone with her stories of recent adventures. The protagonist watched from the sidelines, a quiet observer as his wife captivated the room. Every laugh, every gesture, every word that passed her lips made the tension in his chest grow tighter. The weight of the impending confrontation pressed down on him, but he remained calm. He could feel time slipping away, and his moment was drawing near. As the evening reached its peak, the protagonist stood up, glass in hand, to make a toast. The guests quieted, their attention shifting toward him. He cleared his throat, his gaze steady as he began speaking about love, marriage, and trust, words that now felt hollow in his own life. Trust, he said, once broken, can never be the same. The room fell silent. Julia looked at him, confused, as if she couldn't understand the significance of what he was saying. The protagonist took a breath and let the truth slip out, his voice sharp. "I know about Max," he said, and the room froze. A collective gasp went through the guests as Julia's face drained of color. She looked around the room, searching for something to hold onto, but it was too late. The protagonist didn't stop. He laid out the details, texts, phone calls, expensive gifts, and watched as shock spread across Julia's face. Her lips trembled as she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. He had her. There would be no denying it now. The room was thick with tension as the guests processed what had just been revealed. Some were visibly shocked. Others awkwardly shifted in their seats. Julia tried to defend herself, stumbling over her words, but the facade had crumbled. Her composure shattered, leaving her exposed. The protagonist remained calm, his gaze unyielding as she faltered. There was no sympathy in his eyes, only cold determination. He didn't need to say more. The truth had been laid bare. The guests murmured among themselves, but the protagonist had no more words. He had won. He turned and walked away, leaving Julia to pick up the pieces. The fallout was swift. Julia's reputation was tarnished. Whispers started before the evening even ended. News of her affair with Max spread quickly. Friends distanced themselves, and her status as the charming, elegant wife was shattered. Max's own life fell apart when his wife saw the evidence. She filed for divorce, and soon the affair was the talk of every gathering. The protagonist moved on with his life, unaffected by the drama swirling around him. He no longer cared about the fallout. His victory was complete. As time passed, the protagonist reflected on the ordeal. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it no longer consumed him. The truth had been revealed, and in doing so, he had reclaimed control of his life. No longer shackled by Julia's lies, he felt a sense of freedom he hadn't known in years. The anger and hurt faded, replaced by a calm resolve. He had exposed the truth on his terms, and in doing so, regained his dignity. There was no more pretending. He was free to move forward. The next chapter of his life was his to write, and he felt empowered to do so.